First Pres. Chris?
All right, good morning. Rachel has put up a few slides for me, and so I will try not to descend into Professor Chris mode, but a little bit of this is what I do for a living, and I'm thrilled that we finally have the opportunity to do solar here on this facility. And so the high-level pitch for all of you to focus on is that there are about 700 or 800 churches in the United States that have done solar on their roof, and we now have the opportunity to join their ranks. Next slide. So this is a visual that I use in my classes, and the small details are not important, but that little orange circle on the left shows how much energy the whole world uses per year. And the yellow circle is how much sunshine hits the world per year. And so it is our most abundant resource. And compared to the coal and the nuclear and the petroleum and natural gas circles that you see on the right, it is an abundant resource that we can use for free. And so the answer is always, why should we use sunshine? So next slide, Rachel, you'll see just a few of the answers here. It's obviously our largest and most abundant source of energy. It basically lands on the roof of this building for free and causes no pollution. The panels that turn the sunshine into electricity will pay for themselves in about 10 years. And then the money we save on that electric bill, we can put into other ministries and other purposes in this church. Next slide. So this is a visual of one of our predecessor churches here in Durango, the River Church. And they embarked on this same effort about what, Bob, about 3 years ago? Yeah. 3 years ago. And I wanted to show you this partly to give you a sense of how it actually works. So when you have a flat roof, these racks don't penetrate through the roof. You don't want to risk having water come into your building. So they just sit on the roof with those concrete weights to hold them down. And then they're sloped slightly to face the sun. And so there's lots of opportunity for volunteers to help. You need to put the racks together, you need to set the weights on them and so forth. And it's a flat roof, so that part of the project is much easier for individuals to help with. We're not recruiting folks to go climb up on a sloped roof and risk their lives. This is a straightforward process. Next slide. So this is a visual that just kind of shows what the project is going to look like from above. And just to orient you, 12th Street is on the top of the image and the alleyway is on the left side and 3rd Avenue is on the right side. So the whole thing is kind of turned like this relative to us sitting in the building. Next, Rachel. So essentially what's going to happen is the solar panels and the racks and the weights, that has to be kind of staged and assembled first. And so a lot of that work will occur on the ground. And then we'll use something like a cherry picker to put it up on the roof. Next slide. And then there's going to be 29 panels mounted on this side of the old sanctuary on the metal roof, and they'll face south. Next. And then there'll be 22 more panels that'll be on the flat part of the Christian education wing over there. And that's where volunteers can do the most good to help. And there's a permanent ladder that goes up from the 2nd floor to the roof, so no one has to stand or hang out over the edge of the building to get to the top. Next. So how can you help? There's just a few key things that people who are interested can assist with. Obviously, the AmeriCorps volunteers will be here with a nonprofit called Solar Barn Raising, and they're going to do most of the most difficult projects, but we can use some help assembling things on the ground first, and then staging materials on the roof to get them into the right position for the experts to assemble them, and bringing materials to the AmeriCorps volunteers and the solar barn raising folks to help with the steep roof part. Lastly, of course, and most importantly, you can also contribute financially. So next slide. Basically, when Bob ran the analysis, we figured out that this church and the manse next door use about $4,500 worth of electricity per year. And with this project, we'll be able to essentially eliminate that bill. And then we can put that money to use with other ministries in this building and in our community. So roughly speaking, the whole project upfront will be around $50,000. That's the solar panels, the racks, the weights, the labor, and some of the electrical work that it takes to hook it all up. I think most of you know how it works, but essentially we make electricity during the day, probably more than we need. We send that back to LPEA and then we buy some back from them at night. And as long as we make as much as they sell us, the bill washes out to even over the course of the year, even if the electricity is moving back and forth. So the good news is that this church was donated a property in Casa Grande, Arizona, which I think you all know about. We were able to sell that property a few years ago, and that money helped to pay for these kinds of upgrades to our facilities, but we've kind of had to deplete the fund that we keep around to help cover projects like that. And so we're seeking your help to try to replenish some of that fund. And so the goal is to raise about half of the project's cost, or $25,000, by the end of July. If you want to contribute, just label your contribution solar and they can go to the church in all the ways that you're used to using. It could be a check or it could be electronic. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that there are really a number of great outcomes from this. We've got a series of AmeriCorps volunteers in town for just a short period of time. This will be a sort of a great purpose and life skill for them to be involved in this project. We can improve the quality of our environment. We can save money and become better stewards of the resources that God's entrusted to us. So don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Bob Condit. Bob, do you want to stand up and make sure they all know who you are? So either of us can help with questions, and things are going to kick off next week. And so there's a sign-up sheet in Westminster Hall. David has additional details if you want to get a little bit of background before the project starts. And he's going to be organizing waves of volunteers to help either during the day or in the evenings, off and on, for the next couple weeks.